Hello, everyone. Hi, I see Piper's already here. Hi, Piper. Piper's in Austin, Texas. So we've already got people from all over. I'm in the Midwest. Jen, you're in Boston, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully it's warm in Austin today. We were talking about how it's very cold here. It is sunny, but it's very, very cold. And the last time I did a LinkedIn Live, I think it was in late April, there was snow on the ground still. So things are getting better. Maybe not in the world, but in terms of weather. Yeah.
We'll take what we can get.
We will absolutely take what we can get. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll let more people join and get started formally in a moment. But in the meantime, I'll just kind of give people an overview of how the session is going to go. So if you went to the previous one of these that we did with Milek, you'll know that we'll stick around. We're happy to answer questions as, if you drop them in the LinkedIn comments, we'll see them as questions. But I'll be just walking kind of casually through a conversation with Jen about her work, about how her business made this big shift toward realizing that it was really about community and aligning around this idea of community. Hey, Carolina. She's in Mexico. So we'll be talking about your story, Jen, and just kind of going through challenges and all that, but we can let the conversation go where it will. So yeah, let's see. Anybody else here? Let's do a roll call. Anybody else? Let us know in the chat if you are here, and then we'll get started in just a moment. And also we'll probably go for about 45 minutes or so, and we'll wrap up at about 45 after the hour. So, all right, everybody. So I am so excited to have you here, Jen. I've known you now for about, what's it been, like a year and a half or so that you joined the Engage Your Online Community program, and I got to know your work through that. And then we've been able to do webinars together. Jen is an incredible career coach and runs a program for people looking for jobs in community with one another. So it's really cool the way in which you've done that, because I'm sure it's usually a very solitary and discouraging process. I mean, I've looked for jobs before. It is a very solitary and discouraging process if you don't have people going through that with you. So yeah, just what do you want to share about yourself, Jen, so people can get to know you a little bit better?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me, Carrie. I am like a big Carrie fangirl, and the work that you do meant a lot to me. And I took your program. I don't know if you remember this, but it was like during election season in 2020.
Yes.
So it was like it was the only good thing I had really to focus on. It was like a good distraction from other things going on. But my background, is in academia and research largely. And so I accidentally kind of fell into adjunct faculty hiring and faculty hiring. I took some time off between undergrad and graduate school, just to catch my breath and assess, and ended up doing that and going to grad school at night. So I didn't realize at the moment how instructive that experience of hiring and higher ed would be. I did go on to get my master's in sociology. I worked at a lab at MIT Sloan School of Management for a while, and then transitioned into postdoc career development at Mass General Hospital before going full-time into Work Wonders. So it started as a little side hustle from reading and editing my friends' resumes, really, and blogging turned into what's now my full-time job in business. And I work primarily with mission-driven professionals. We do a lot of the logistics, and probably about 90% of our clients are job seekers. So we spend a lot of time on strategy, including resume writing, LinkedIn, relationship building, and really helping people understand what the job search looks like from the hiring perspective. And I'm excited to talk about community because for many years, my business started out as a kind of a traditional one-on-one career coaching model.
Yeah.
And there's elements of that are still at play, but in the last couple of years, it really became evident that bringing people together to do these work and to see their challenges as, commonalities and not, problems that they were experiencing alone or about them,
Yeah.
became increasingly important. So that's the short version of the story.
Yeah. Yeah. So you started out doing one-on-one work. I mean, as many of us like consultants and strategists do. And then when did you realize that this was a more of a community effort? Can you talk about like how that realization came about and what
Yes,
you did?
it definitely happened when I started doing in-person workshops, probably
Mhm.
like 3 or 4 years ago. And office space in Boston is very expensive. So I like booked space for like 5 people. Like I could have 5 participants at my first workshop. I had no idea if it was, going to be something that worked or not. And it was such a positive experience. Like
Mm,
5 people was a fantastic group. I ended up, taking, bigger leaps and doing bigger workshops. And what I sometimes joked about was that like the workshop would be just as valuable if I wasn't there because like, people were, like introducing themselves and like having conversations about how they were experiencing the same thing. They were making connections and introductions so that they could help each other. And that's just something career coaching can't offer. Like it's just
yeah.
not part of the one-on-one model. So I knew that I wanted to have a group program that could emulate what those workshops were offering. And that's really where the basis of the group program started and evolved to the community model that we have now.
So you actually discovered this pre-pandemic then?
Yeah, yeah, I knew. Yeah, I think for sure we were doing the workshops ahead of time before the pandemic, and they were really successful,
Yeah.
um, and people had a great experience. And I was trying to figure out like how to have a business that looked more like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, how did that manifest initially? Were you like on Facebook groups? Were you using like, what was the technology that you kind of were testing out and that you tried first?
Yeah. So when we created the program, we created like a 3-month program that we ran twice before turning it into an evergreen community model. And the technology was pretty basic. We used Zoom,
Okay. Of
novel.
Yeah.
Maybe you've heard of it. And we used like LinkedIn groups. So we started with LinkedIn
Mm,
groups. So it was really bare bones basic. Like the first time it was very much kind of like a pilot project. And I also was using Thinkific as a course platform, so I
right.
created video modules, I had resources that people could access and pursue online. And we use Airtable, so I review
Mhm.
people's resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn profiles, and Airtable is sort of like how they submit their work. I also use Loom a lot
Mhm.
to make those screen recordings. So it's pretty bare. And even now, actually, we don't use any. We've moved to Circle,
Yeah.
but nothing like super fancy or even particularly costly. It's just like
Mhm.
really basic software.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm assuming you have like automations and things set up, which we could nerd out about another
We do, yes,
time.
for sure.
Yeah, getting all that stuff into Airtable and then reviewing it there. That sounds like we do
Yes.
a whole like look at the back
Yeah.
end of that. But I know Carolina actually uses LinkedIn groups, and I'm curious, like, what was the cause for moving off of LinkedIn groups and onto Circle?
Yeah. So I think I just wanted a place where we could talk that wasn't involved, like that didn't have, that wasn't kind of like surrounded by other people's conversations.
Yeah.
And I just like creating the space to do your job search is so hard, right? Like if you think about
Yeah.
like, I'm going to go home and like write a resume or update my resume and sit, like all the work that's done is so hard to do. And I didn't want those conversations to feel hard either. So I actually wasn't trying to encourage more engagement. I was trying to create more peace
Mm.
for as people, so that there was not all this like stimulation going on while people were thinking about their job search and could really focus.
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, I think about that too, like with our community building space, which we also use Circle. It's like we have enough noise going on in our
Yeah.
online lives. So more engagement is not the necessarily success for the participants in that program or in that community or that course. It's actually like in your case, peace. Like I love that word because it's not a peaceful process. You're like,
Yes.
you have no
Yeah.
control over outcomes. Like you only have half the information, like all of that.
Yes.
And I think that's true too for, what I think about is like if there was a constant stream of activity in my community by some measures of success, like that would be pretty successful.
Yeah.
But actually I find that as long as we're doing stuff that's really purposeful and we're sharing things that are like, again, like not just random questions, like we're getting a bunch of newbie kind of questions over and over and over again, that's actually really valuable. That piece is really
Yeah.
valuable.
Yes. Because, I think if you are struggling in your career, the last thing you really want is to be logging into a site with all these reminders that potentially make you feel like you're not moving fast enough, you're not
Yeah.
doing enough, and you're behind. And it's not that search, like it's hard, there's some of the search functions like weren't quite there. What I liked about LinkedIn is that the members could get more information on each other pretty
Yeah.
easily and connect pretty easily. So I guess that was one advantage, but probably one of the biggest takeaways from my time in your program was that like my job was not to like extract as much engagement as possible from these people, but like
Mhm.
actually they have enough extraction. And so the time I spent in the program was really like, oh, I've been trying to like pull things out when actually I need to like just really focus on holding space,
Wow.
creating peace and prioritizing presence. So that was, I mean, I'm happy to talk more about that, but I'm glad you brought that
Yeah.
up. I think that was a real game changer in my thinking about what are we creating and why.
Yeah. So when you started out, I mean, Circle launched probably like right at the beginning of
Mhm.
2020. And so you had already kind of made that decision to move on to Circle, and then you joined the program, right? So
No, it
yeah.
was after. I saw Circle. I experienced Circle as a participant, and then that
Wow.
December, I launched our own Circle community. So it's
Okay.
pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, got it. Yeah. So I mean, you said you kind of had this realization around like that it wasn't about more engagement. Is that how you had been thinking about it when you're thinking about moving on to Circle and or making these changes to the program? You're like, I need to get more, more of this
Yeah,
initially.
I think so.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know what other metrics, like, I didn't have any way to kind of assess, like, people were getting jobs, right? But like,
right.
does that tell me the community's successful? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it was, the last couple of years have been really difficult. So like more is not more, less is
Yes.
more. And figuring out what people actually need is ideal. And so, like I said, I wanted to create peace for people. Circle. I think initially I chose LinkedIn because I was like, people are already there, or they're supposed to be there,
Right.
and like it'll be an easy lift. But actually, I'd rather have like a little extra step for like a higher quality, less overstimulating experience on the platform.
Mhm.
So that's sort of like what initiated that transition in thinking, and also just like the tools and strategies that I was using.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fascinating because there are so many people, a lot of entrepreneurs who think that like they want more engagement and then will burn out basically after trying to do that for long enough. Like you'll get that spike and even still you're like, what is this for?
Yes.
Is this really making a difference?
So some of the things that I heard early on were like, I'm sorry I missed this. Like, don't
Yeah.
kick me out. I feel guilty. I feel bad. So it's like it really makes you realize like the more you offer, the more people feel like they're missing if they can't or
Yeah.
aren't able to engage. And so like it changed the way we talk when we bring people into our community. We say like, here's what we offer. And here's what we think will be the most valuable aspects of this for you. We offer all these touch points so that the majority of our community can access the support they need throughout the time they're with us, not because you need every single touch point to be successful.
Mhm.
And like really clarifying that as part of the onboarding process, because otherwise people will feel like failures.
Yeah.
And that really, people thought I'd kick them out. I'm like, I'm not going to kick you out, so trying to like provide enough context so that you can mitigate people feeling like they're not doing enough. I want people to do as little as possible because people are busy and
Right.
they have lives and they have goals that they're working on with us. So like I actually don't want to give them more to do that they don't need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Get them the fastest results possible.
Yes.
And if the community serves them, then they will be back in there making more
Yep.
relationships happen and all
Yeah.
that. But forcing it is not.
Yeah.
not an answer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it sets the wrong tone about what a good job search process requires. Like we don't
Mhm.
pride ourselves in, getting people the job the fastest way or the fastest job. Like we help people make strategic career moves. And that requires thoughtfulness and diligence, and pacing, not speed.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you ever part of communities like, I mean, where do you think you got this idea that you needed more engagement? Were you part of communities where there was a lot of engagement, maybe on Facebook or LinkedIn, and you're like, I need something like this?
That's a good question because yeah, I don't know where I got that idea. I guess I thought I saw that as the value, like the engagement, like the conversation that actually happens in circle is really a bonus. Like it's not the purpose of why we're together. It allows people to DM, it allows people to ask questions. But really through your program, I was like, the purpose is to come together live and solve job search and career challenges and questions.
Mhm.
And so by prioritizing those pieces, even just in an initial way, it was really clear like this is where we're going to put our time and energy. This is going to be where we change our language. And we do get requests to do new stuff, but we don't really get requests to do more stuff.
Mhm.
And so I think that kind of tells me we're in the
Yeah.
right trajectory.
Yeah, Carolina asked a really good question, which is, how did you unearth those profound feelings about your members? Did you do member research? Was it more just reflection on what you already knew about members? Like, what was that process like, and how did you realize that?
I went through the program and I did the member research.
You did it.
Um,
Yes, I love
the
this.
thing, I mean, one of the reasons I joined, like I remember, I don't know if I told you this, Carrie, but like I joined your webinar. I heard about your work and I was like, oh, I should join her mailing list. Like her work sounds relevant. And then I got an email about a webinar. I was like, let me sign up for that. But I wasn't even really thinking like, how do I address my community issues? I just realized you were also a researcher during that webinar. And I was like, I'm just going to sign up for whatever she's selling because I've been doing this business thing for years and I've yet to find someone who talks about like index variables on a webinar. And so like I'm buying whatever she's selling. And I was probably like, I was an early bird. I got your book as part, like I just bought right away. I signed up. And so like it leveraged my strengths to kind of go through that, like my own interests. But also the way you laid it out was very like practical. It was, and having managed research projects for faculty for years, like
Mm,
I understand the way you have to be like, here's the bounds,
yeah,
like here's the minimum viable research opportunity.
yeah.
So it didn't take weeks and months. Like it really took like a couple of weeks and a few deep conversations with our most, active members, who are really eager to share. When I realized like, okay, we don't have to do a ton of stuff. We have to do the right stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't think our onboarding looks particularly intense. When we do an onboarding of, people can join individually and also we do group launches. So when they do the individual launch, like I usually meet with them privately. And when they come through a group program, we have a video module that I repost pretty regularly about like where to find things, what this is about. But everyone gets private feedback on where they should focus.
Mm,
And so I just find that to be time really well spent because it
yeah.
sets everyone's expectations. It prevents guilt and FOMO, and people can access what they need when they need it. So
Mm,
a little time goes a long way to
yeah,
freeing up your time in the long
yeah.
run.
That's interesting. So you actually do like custom, you kind of give for each person, like, here's where you should focus in this program.
Mhm.
Is that time consuming to do that?
Yeah, sometimes it
Yeah.
is. But I think that's like to me, that's where we're adding value is like,
Yes.
people come to us and they trust us with their careers and their livelihoods. The least we can do is take 30 minutes and figure out like what is it that they need.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm happy to do it because I think it leads to a better outcome for them and like better expectations for us. I'm
Mhm.
not one of those business owners that has problems with people like emailing me 24/7 or crossing thresholds and boundaries that make me feel uncomfortable. Everyone's super respectful because everyone's clear.
Yeah.
And I find that to just be time well spent.
Yeah. You also have the most inspiring, email autoresponder that I have ever seen. So all of you should email Jen.
That
It's like
was
a
so
copy
helpful because
responder.
I made that shift. People used to email me a lot, and then I just moved it to circle DMs. And honestly, it
Ah,
wasn't because of my clients. It was just because I got so much junk in my inbox. I
yeah.
was afraid I'd miss client messages. So I put that as an out of office responder, and right
Yeah.
away people were very, very respectful and following directions. So yeah, I love my office out of responder too.
Yeah, it's basically like, if you're not a direct client, expect a response in, like, I forget how many days you have on there, but it really sets expectations, and I'm like, I'm afraid to do it still, I'll be totally honest with you, I've thought about it, and I'm like, I'm afraid.
I get a lot of compliments on it,
Yeah,
and it doesn't stop the junk mail from coming in and the
sure.
like unsolicited sales pitches. But I also don't feel bad about not responding to that because I'm
Yeah,
like, they got a response. They know they're not
exactly.
on the list of people I'll be responding to.
Exactly. Yeah, they know. They know your boundaries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so can you tell me more about the realization, that your business really was about community? You mentioned that a little bit,
Yeah.
earlier, but, like, how did that aha moment come about, and what was that like? How did you experience it?
Yeah. So I was thinking like if we're going to be promoting this as like a service model, like our marketing should reflect that and our language should reflect that. And the content we put, like how can we sort of like integrate this? Um, because when I think about selling the idea of community to job seekers, like not everyone wants it, not everyone needs it. I have a lot of like executive clients who tend to work with me one-on-one because their schedule sort of their needs don't necessitate that, but we have a lot of mid-career mission driven professionals in our community. And so I like to use actually webinars and I like to create opportunities for interaction.
Mhm.
So not community with like a capital C, but community is in connection as part of our marketing strategies
Yeah,
and brand awareness strategies so that people understand like this is the vibe. And it
yeah,
gets a really good sense of like who I am, how we work, how we help people make decisions. Because I think, for our small team, like we're not direct, we don't tell people really what to do so much as like we can present them with a series of strategies and help figure out what's going to make sense for them and how to customize those things. And so the degree to which we can demonstrate that in all that we do, I think works to our advantage.
mhm.
And so that's really what it means to me is like, how can we double down on this in tone, in theme, in values, and help people do this, whether they're working with us or not. Just think more holistically about what they're experiencing. And honestly, the last couple of years have, I think, just reinforced that.
Yeah,
I tell my clients that I played the long game by being like a Marxist career coach. It just like really, you don't have to over invest in things that don't feel good
yeah.
for them to be really important to your business. And so I think people are looking for support. They're looking, to build relationships that are meaningful. So it's just every step of the way, it's kind of been reinforced as the right thing to do.
Mm. That makes me think of, kind of the opposite mindset of that, which you see a lot of. I mean, there's plenty of options out there where probably career coaches are just putting out a bunch of Facebook ads, and, I'm sure you get a lot of numbers and leads that way. Is that something that, like, you think about in terms of, is it, I don't know what my question is here. It's more just like I'm observing that I see entrepreneurs going more for that quantity
Yeah.
and, volume versus what you're talking about, more like interaction and, depth of connection. Like, are those 2 things opposed, I guess I would say, like, to each other? Or
That's
are
a
they?
good question, Carrie.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think, um, I think holistically as a business, we probably have enough offerings to scale, but like I want to think about what aspects we scale, like what is scalable.
Mhm.
And for me, like those relationships are important to me. Because that's my work experience. So, I do have like a suite of digital products, that I could probably put up an Instagram ad and sell more of. Have I done that? No, because like what like lights me up and
Mhm.
what I like is really working with people in this capacity and bringing them together to do this work. I do think it could scale I mean, March was our best month ever. So like we're going into, it's obviously scaling.
Yeah.
I think, it's a matter of I'm doing some things now to put some like more foundational, every area of growth. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, a whole bunch of stuff fell through the cracks. Here's what I
Totally.
can do better before I have another big month. Let me figure out how to like seal the cracks.
Yeah.
And so I'm in a like sealing the crack phase right now.
Yeah.
And and I feel like I'll be able to bring like new facilitators on. But
Mhm.
even doing that, like it's not as simple as just like hiring a resume writer. It's like, this is how we do this.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like all of that needs to be slow and diligent. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I've seen plenty of programs or, companies scale like that, and then they lose all of what made it special to begin with.
Yeah.
And then you just see that churn happening. And then you go more and more into, okay, we need more ads to make more money to get
That's
people through the funnels. It's a vicious cycle versus what you're talking about. And I think the way I approach business is really similar. Like
yeah.
it's lifelong relationships that you're building, and it will bear fruit.
And it does. I
And it
mean,
does.
no matter what I do for marketing, the referrals come in, right? So like that's still one of our biggest sources of business is people sending their friends
Yeah.
and colleagues our way. So I always, think of the work we do. Our work is also marketing, and that's what makes kind of the time investment worthwhile as well.
Yeah. I saw Piper asked a really interesting question, which was about something a little bit back that you said, which is what is the difference between more stuff and new stuff?
Yeah, good question. I guess I could have been clearer about that. So when I say stuff, I was referring. So right now, what our community components largely look like for our job search community is like I host 2 live calls a month. Every week, there's a chance to get feedback, to submit your work and get feedback from me. And then we do some co-working sessions as well. And we actually have pared back the offerings as a result of like the kind of profound burnout that people have been
Mm,
experiencing. So we've gotten some requests, not for like more office hours with me, for example, which I would count as more stuff, but to host like a monthly discussion on like a Harvard Business Review article about work or something like that, which I would put in the new stuff category. And so like we solicit that like formally and informally from the folks that we're working with. And I just think the last couple of years there's been so many ups and downs, and
mm,
you know I feel kind of constantly iterating and like waiting and seeing and like assessing about like what's possible and what's needed and what's wanted and necessary. So I don't ever feel like I have a full grasp on that. It's just like I try to be responsive to what I can offer, like what I have the capacity for, and like what others have the need for.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like if you found the perfect scenario in which you had all the offerings that you wanted, what would have been perfect 6 months ago is very different from
Yeah.
today. And then 6 months before that, and then 6 months before that. I'm sure that's always been true, but especially during the last like 2.5 years or so.
Yeah.
That's what I've been talking with people about community building. I'll go into clients and they'll say, well, we did research at the beginning of the pandemic, so we can use that. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, is that why you're still running the same old webinars and you're seeing like nobody showing up for them anymore?
Yes. Yes.
Um, because
Webinars, yeah, great example.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
know because we both run them,
Yeah.
and I've really changed my approach to them, like drastically changed. It's much more relational now, and
Yes.
because there's just too many people talking at you. Webinars.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like, I work with a lot of professional development groups on joint venture webinars, and like
Yeah.
the show up rate has been really low.
Oh yeah.
And so it's like what that's telling me is like everyone's exhausted.
Yeah.
And I think to some degree, like no, to every degree, I'm not really interested in fighting that, right? Like if there's
Mhm.
like a really dominant energy, it's much better to acknowledge that. And if that means I get a break too, like that's what it means for a few weeks or a few months. So yeah, I'm not even trying to have it figured all out. I'm just trying to take good enough care of myself so that I can like, be flexible and responsive.
Yeah, and I think that goes for anyone building any kind of community is like it needs to be iterated upon regularly. That
Yeah.
is the work, is iterating upon it.
Yeah.
Um, and I do that with my own program. I'm in the middle of completely revamping the community. Like I added new spaces in there. I'm retiring some spaces, and that's just because the needs have shifted.
Yeah.
And you've got to be watching and listening and looking at the data and all that stuff. to know that.
Yeah. That this conversation makes me think so one of the ways we bring people into our community is through job search accelerators. So we do like a concentrated 4-week period of like weekly office hours, occasionally throughout the year. And the first time I ran one, our first office hour was January 6th, 2021. And I was like, should I even do this? Like, is anyone going to come? And
Mhm.
every single person showed up that night. And I was like, is everyone here because they're that excited about their job search, or did we just not know collectively how else to respond except to like show up and work?
Yeah.
I also led a workshop during the Kavanaugh hearings. That was in person at the time. So it was just like, even when you have things planned and people show up, you actually still have to be responsive
Yeah.
and on your toes, because I think people show up more often for the connection as at least as much as for like the actual content. And sometimes you just have to create space for wherever people are at. You can't fight it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said about, like, people would get value even if you weren't there, because it is true that the connection itself is extremely valuable, and
Yeah.
you're like, the people who are attracted to your work are going to most likely get along with one another,
Yeah.
and so giving them that space to then meet, I think it's profound. It opens up new job openings,
Yeah.
opportunities for people. It's you don't even know the kismet
That's
of
right.
it all.
And that's another metric I never thought about until I took your course. Was like, are these people engaging off hours,
Mm,
off platform?
yeah.
And that happens a lot. That's probably one of our most frequent types of engagement beyond what we offer formally, is those folks finding each other and having full on relationships. So
Yeah.
that's another thing I learned from you, was like, that is a good sign. That means we're doing something right. We're on the right track.
Yeah, hard to measure that. I look at things like, because Circle has DMs, and you
Yeah.
can actually look at the number of DMs in there. It's just the most rudimentary way to look at it. But you can also
Yeah.
survey for that and ask, have you met someone as part of this community that has,
Yeah.
like, become a friend outside of this community?
Yes. The
Um,
way I informally measure it is when I'm looking at a client's LinkedIn, and I can see how many mutual connections we have.
oh, that's creative.
And
I
so
like
it's very, I don't really, I know it's happening so consistently and has been the whole time that I don't capture it quite as much as I do. But like every time I'm on someone's profile, I'm like, wow, we have 28 mutual connections. We did not know each other 3 months ago. How is this possible? So
Wow,
that's another way. It's just using a little LinkedIn investigation to see who's
I
reached
never
out.
thought about that.
Yeah,
That's yeah. I feel like I can't really do that because community builders are all like always networking.
that's true. That's true.
It's a little bit of a false metric. But
My
certainly
people hate to network, so it's
yeah,
a good metric for me. We've overcome a hill here.
yeah, yeah. But I did hear when I did a webinar recently, somebody said they added 18 LinkedIn connections as a result and has been like talking to people afterwards. And I was like, well, then fantastic. That's exactly it. If that's what you needed from that, then
Yeah,
great. Because yeah, we could all use more connection right now
yeah,
and always.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Oh, I just got really excited about
Yeah.
that. Like, so I mean, I'm curious. I've been talking a lot about mindset and internal challenges and things like that. And you talked a little bit about self-awareness. Are there any challenges that you run into in terms of like mindset and internal kind of struggles that you have as you're building community?
Yeah. Are there any? Yes. I mean, yes, there are a lot of internal struggles. And I think part of it is, um, I have like I'm an Aries sun. I have a Sagittarius stellium. I have like a lot of, like, I have a bias towards action, is largely underselling my impulsivity. And so I think really just like sticking to the framework, the document that I created, in your program, like I reference regularly. I've like forced myself to sit and look at it and reread it,
Mhm.
because I tend to like just do things. I would add more programming. I would be like, we should have like every week I should have this post scheduled, and that content added. So I think that the tendency I have is to like fight my worst instincts that I don't have any data to support, but like somehow thinking more would be better.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big one. So whenever I get that, I just check in with my community. Like, I'm thinking about doing this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please tell me no
Mhm.
if it's not of interest because,
Yeah.
just like turning the impulse to act into a question, I think is like a really helpful strategy for me.
Yeah.
And then just really sitting with like my current workload and our values and mission, to make sure it aligns. And also not, I tend to think when I come up with a good idea to do something, I need to do it regularly for the rest of my life and just being like, we're going to pilot this.
Mhm.
We're going to see. So not overcommitting and overdoing things.
Yeah. Yeah, when you mentioned the document you created, are you referring to, like, your, purpose and values
Yeah.
and all that? Yeah.
Mhm.
Those are kind of
Yes.
the lenses through which you can then make decisions. Yeah.
Decisions. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to remind myself to come back to mine too, a lot. It's because the way I always explain this, it's countercultural to think that more is not better. Our
Yes.
culture is often saying more is better.
That's right.
And so we have to have some document somewhere that we can return to over and over
Yes.
again. Like
Yeah.
whether that's something you put on your wall and you remind yourself of, or I have a big piece of paper that it's on for myself. Your desktop background.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a decision-making tool.
Yes,
So
yes.
crucial.
And it's not really that different than the process that I encourage my clients to walk through, but I think we all need a dose of our own medicine administered
Yes.
by someone else.
Yeah.
So it was really helpful. And it's also like I've reused that and shared that when I'm writing copy. Even for my private services, I stick largely to that because it works.
Mhm.
And also thinking about, obviously anything new we want to add. Um, and it's just like I use it in onboarding contractors who work with our clients,
Oh,
so I can
smart.
be like, this is the vibe.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Oh, I'm kidding. The
Yeah.
comments.
Um, Mo kitties. Um, yeah, I mean, we're not talking about kittens here, like
Yeah,
puppies. Like they're more puppies
agree.
are
More
better.
curious ones
Like,
better.
but not necessarily more community stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm curious. This is more of a bigger picture question, but what are the lessons in your business that you have to keep learning over and over again?
Oh gosh. Um, that's so funny because I am someone who definitely has to learn the same lesson over and over again.
Same.
Um, what what is the lesson that I'm learning over and over again? Honestly, that I probably am at a point where I need more help. There's
Mm,
nothing really worse than like being self-employed and realizing you're the bottleneck. Like when you have a job, you have
yeah.
other people to point the finger at, but those people disappear, when you work for yourself. And there's been there's a lot of like ups and downs in terms of activity because like when I have those peaks, I always have to come back and like fix things that didn't work quite right, or like just like even like website stuff, or if I'm going to hire, then like what needs to happen so that 6 months from now the demand is more significant, to
Mhm.
warrant that. So like figuring out how to manage those ebbs and flows, I think is the trickiest part of business.
Yeah.
Is this peak a fluke? Is it going to happen again? Is this the new normal? And so when I just had my biggest month ever, one of my takeaways was like, this is actually not that sustainable. And so I'm looking to bring on, in the next 6 months, a resume writer who can actually work with clients, like do client facing work. And just delegate more. I think that's hard. I think it's hard to
Yeah.
know, especially if you like the work, right? Like I just said, I like my clients. This is relational work to me. That's what makes it valuable. But also, I can't do this much relational work.
Yes. You're at your Dunbar number. You're past it probably.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, same.
Yeah.
We're same. I feel like receiving because it's also, delegating also requires receiving support and help from others, so, um, that's a big edge for a lot of people, especially people who value service and
Yes.
relationality. Is like, well, you always wanna make sure you're giving more than you're taking, and so it's, just something to be aware of, right? Like this
Yeah. And I
gradual.
think a lot like how do I bring or impose or share my values and the way I approach this work with other people? How do I find that at some sort of scale? Because that actually feels like not an impossible challenge, but that's the challenge, is like making sure that the approach and energy and sort of integrity of what we've created, because there's a lot of career coaching that's like, apply for as many jobs as you can get, take the first thing that comes your way. And so, it would be important to put the right people in place, and doing that with a full client roster is actually really hard. And by the time I recover from peak work, I'm just like, you know what, like, I don't want to do more work. I'm just going to chill. So managing my own energy in relation to what the business is doing is really tricky, in a good way, but tricky.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's true too of anybody who might be here and is like thinking about hiring for their team, like whether you're an entrepreneur or not, you're still going to run into that struggle of like, when do you need help? When do you ask for help? What do you ask them to do? Do you have help? How do you train them to kind of like think the way that you do? All that's really hard. So having systems and decision-making frameworks.
Yeah. And what am I willing to give up?
Yeah, I know.
That's probably the issue. That's it right there.
Yeah, right. I want to do everything.
Yes.
Yes, it's like releasing like this little baby.
Like when I had someone else host calls for me, she would text me, they would text me afterwards, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of sad that I missed that call. Like, I wish I had been there. Should I be on the next one? So that kind of stuff is actually hard. There are like genuinely good moments happening that I'm not there for. That seems unfathomable, for me, but like I said, I could not be in the room and it would work. So that's just evidence of that.
Yeah. I actually have a team right now doing interviews on my behalf. So I'm not doing customer and member interviews anymore. And I have such FOMO. But I listen to them as podcasts. I'm not ready to fully let go.
Okay.
So I record them and I listen to them.
That's good.
But I don't have to be there. And that's actually really lovely.
But I bet that was really hard for you to like as a researcher, like, I need every data point, and I need to be collecting the data point and interpreting the data point.
Yeah. And I need to be there to like ask the sub question. But actually I listen to everyone else doing the interviews and I'm like, they're asking better questions than I would have thought to ask. So I shouldn't be doing this. It's because I'm too close to it oftentimes. Like,
yes.
I have my way of seeing things, and they're more objective when they come at it.
That's great. I'm going to adopt that, actually.
Yeah.
I'm too close to it.
Close to it. I do this. Yeah, we're actually doing research on our own customers right now, and I'm not in them. I'm not in the interviews. So like the community member interviews, I'm essentially not in them.
Yeah.
And it's really, really hard. But I am definitely too close to that.
Yeah.
They're getting way more objective information than I would. I'd be like, oh, we're besties now. So yeah, I feel that. Well, what's next for you in your business and community building?
Yeah, good question. So we're I'm trying to decide what part to share first. So I'm going through my website and doing all the SEO and blog updates, and 8 years worth of that, which is extremely unglamorous. But I realize, like, as traffic goes up, like, I haven't looked at some of these blog posts, and actually looking at some of them that I wrote 8 years ago. Whoo, time to make some changes and updates and streamline the tone and direction of things. So I'm spending some time doing some very foundational work, because I do plan to bring on additional facilitators and expand an aspect of our community that's actually not for job seekers. So we've been working with a professional development crowd that is interested in self-employment, portfolio style careers, personal brand. And so I'll probably be working over the next few months to develop and nurture some content and structure for that, to expand our offerings there. So I will bring people on board to help me with that. I will not be doing it alone. I will not be taking on any more work all by myself.
Yeah. And you'll have new challenges.
That's right.
Which is why you need a community of other entrepreneurs around you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really, really exciting. Like this new offering for a new audience.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And it's like a lot of our early clients are coming back for this kind of work. Some of our clients have already made this transition. And I think, the last couple of years have opened up and changed people's risk analysis about what's possible for them at work. So it's a really exciting space to be in.
Really interesting, because people are getting more into self-employment and moving in that direction. Wow. I see that too among community builders. Some of them, have been laid off over the last several years. And they're like, I don't actually need to work for anybody. I could make as much, if not more money and have more freedom and be
Yeah.
a strategist. And I'm like, cool, welcome.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah. What thinking back on, these changes to the community and everything you've built, what wisdom do you think you'll take with you into these next stages of your journey?
I think there are a few things. I think when you have your people long enough, like those personas are really clear and creating opportunities, distinct opportunities for both, and really learning to be at peace with what other people need. You might want to see them at every call. You might want them to engage maximally, whatever that looks like in your head. But for me, part of my work is helping people tune into like their needs, and like that means like I have to also like address my own role in this. And
Yeah.
I think that helping people figure out what is the minimum viable, positive, productive experience for them is really where this is going. And especially think because a lot of our community members belong to other communities.
Right.
People are invested in a lot of different spaces. So to really be good at what we're good at, which is like holding space and making connections for career alignment and growth, like we don't need to be in every space, we're in our space. And I would encourage other community builders to figure out like what is your mission, what is your purpose, and to not try to be everything to everyone, because actually no one needs that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that minimum viable, what did you say? Minimum viable experience?
Productive experience. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
We need more of that, not just more stuff thrown at
That's
us.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really smart. Now, if you had a magic wand and everything was perfect, what would you create at this point in your journey to make your community even more impactful for those that you serve?
I just need like 3 months of solitude, and I could create like the content in advance. Like the flying the airplane as we go model has reached a peak for me. It worked when I was less busy as a business owner.
Mhm.
But like I have a hard time doing that with a full client roster.
Yeah.
So I think if I had a magic wand, I I would probably be able to like articulate my vision and either have someone else create the content or help more in that. In fact, maybe I'm thinking that maybe there's some vision of this that will
Wonderful.
will work.
Yeah.
But like also like a 3 month sabbatical, I could do it
Mm,
myself. I could figure it out. So I'm just trying to like really carve out more space for that work, because the infrastructure for the next step, it's time to update the curriculum we've been using, and so it's really just like a lot of
mhm.
unglamorous, but it's the bones of what we do. So I
Totally.
just need some time. And also I need no more crises.
I know.
You know, I need sunny weather.
I know.
It's actually a long list.
It's actually all these other things too.
Yeah,
3 months off in the summertime in
yeah,
Hawaii.
that's too much to
Yeah.
ask.
I think you could totally do that. That
Well,
sounds
you said
very
magic wand,
achievable.
so I ran with
Yeah.
it.
No, I think that's very achievable.
Yes.
And, I think important to get, breaks like that,
Yeah.
um, to really see the bigger picture. And
Yes.
as a business owner, like, we do have that, ability. It's hard to see it,
Yeah.
but we set the rules, so,
It's true. Something I didn't expect as a business owner is that like every good month, like when I had my best month ever, I was like, oh, I don't feel like how I thought I'd feel. And every good month has been that way because every great month reveals something about your business that like needs a change. Like you either need to hire people, you either need to like eliminate an offering, there's like it's actually like very hard to kind of take the time and like enjoy where you're at and enjoy the
Mhm.
success because there's always something else. So I made sure that I celebrated a milestone for the business, but then I was like, man, I got to get back to work and I got to make sure
Mhm.
that the next time this happens, like things happen in a way that like really feels a lot better for me, and that there's some like more structure and intact, on the back end. It's never visible to people, but
Right.
it's the parts that we feel,
Mhm.
that need some
Oh,
work sometimes.
that resonates so much with
Oh, that
me.
makes
You
me
have
feel better.
no idea.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. When you reach those months that are the best, it doesn't feel how you think it's gonna feel,
Yeah.
and it's not like the magical answer to all of your,
It's not. There have been months where I've made less money and enjoyed work more.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
In there,
and
it's like,
and that's a really interesting paradox that I think about a lot and
yeah,
and I'm slow to work through. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
sure.
Ugh, I'm gonna be thinking about
Another
that
whole
now.
conversation.
I know, I know. All right. Well, wrapping up here, how can people stay in touch with you? How can they find you in the world?
Oh, yes, I'd love to stay in touch. You can follow me here on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn. I do live streaming occasionally as well. And you can learn more about our work at workwonderscareers.com if you're interested. So thanks for having me. I love the program. Every time someone's like, I'm starting a community, I send them your way. I just think you bring so much rigor and integrity to your work. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to join you today.
Oh, that means a lot to me. And yeah, to see what your business has been able to do and see you grow and all of that is just incredible. And knowing that we had like a tiny little piece in that
Totally. Very
um,
good.
is incredible. Yeah, and I'm especially over the last 2 years with the way jobs hunting and all that has been. I don't know, people tell you all the time, but your work is extremely important and you have a huge impact with everything you do, and it has ripple effects. I
Thank
know
you.
it does. So yeah, just cheers to more of that.
Very
And to a 3-month sabbatical.
Yes.
I'm gonna check in with you in 2023. I wanna
Okay.
hear about the sabbatical. All right, everybody. Let us know if you have any questions after we can answer in the comments. Thank you so much for being here today. And we just appreciate all of you and your presence and all of the work that you do. And we will see you on the internet.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Take care.
Bye.